This episode is brought to you by our sponsor, Phantom Boxing, a brand new company starting in late 2019. They sent us a great discount code for awesome subscribers. Go to phantomboxing.co.uk if you want to try enter their 6 styles of boxing gloves, headgear, groin guards, hand wraps, or their Cobra Reflex bag. And when you go to checkout and enter the code CombatCorp10 to save 10% off any and all purchases. That's CombatCorp10 for any and all purchases. Thanks again to Phantom Boxing and enjoy the show. So, you ready?
I am.
All right. Ready in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Combat Corporation, your source for combat sports. I'm your host, Al the Postmaster Tomorrow, and today I am extremely excited to bring back the Combat Chat. This is the third, and today we make Combat Corp history. We have our first female host with us, co-host, and Logan Weaver. Logan, how are you?
Hi, I'm great. How are you?
That's great. That's great to hear. So Logan is actually a local amateur MMA fighter. She fights out of Kingston, Ontario, Canada, and we fight for the same promotion in Cage Wars. We fought under Tim Rankins a couple of times. Well, you had the fight which we briefly talked about, the one in your career. Take me back to that. Take me back to that night real fast. You know, what was your emotions going through, and what got you into MMA actually?
So I'll start with what got me into MMA. I have been a huge fan of the UFC since it started getting really popular. I want to say when I was like 12, 13 is when I really started getting into it, and it was something that I really wanted to do.
Right.
Then life kind of happened, and I got thrown a bit of a wrench in my plan, and now I have the opportunity to do it, which is amazing. And we had my first fight on January 31st at Cage Wars, which was unreal. My emotions going into that, I just looked at it like it was any other martial arts competition. I've been competing in traditional martial arts since I was 8 or 9. I can't even remember. It's been so long. So I my kids in the background going, show off. So I just kind of prepared myself mentally the same way that I would a martial arts competition. And I knew going in, I've said it before, but there's only one person that comes a winner. And my mentality going into it was that it was going to be me. And I wasn't going in there to lose. So
fearless. That's awesome. I love mentality. This is what my coach always said. He said, you might go in. He said, you either win or you don't get the decision. You didn't lose. That's all you have to say. Because, sometimes, unfortunately, you go to someone's backyard, you don't lose. We all know how that works. But that's awesome. So you said traditional martial arts, and you and I talked about this briefly earlier. You mentioned that you actually did a form of animal kung fu. And I want you to talk about that, because that's something you don't often hear. Like I was mentioning earlier too, people will look at me and say, "What'd you start with?" I said, "Boxing." Like, that's so simple. Yeah. I just punched people. That was it. Or you ask someone, I wrestled, I kickboxed, I do jujitsu. You know, those things are so common nowadays. But you get, even karate is a little bit more accepted nowadays. But you hear something like that style of kung fu, which you think of a couple guys like Kung Lee. Or, Vernon Tiger White way back in the day. And a lot of those guys did that. And it worked well for them. Even Boss Rutan did that stuff too. But, tell us a little bit about those backgrounds in sports. That's one thing that caught my interest a lot. Your traditional, she's a black belt in two different disciplines, folks. Don't mess with her.
Yeah, so like I said, I started when I was little, and I started in karate actually because I was getting bullied really bad at school, and it was a program. Yeah,
why
people used
to
pick on me.
I don't understand.
I don't know. Kids are so mean. I don't get it. But it started out as a lunch program at my school, and the head instructor, who's now, I think he's like a 9th degree black belt or something insane, was speaking to my parents and said, she's got more of a natural talent. She needs to be doing more than just this lunchtime program. So I really got started in that. And then I remember seeing some of the Kung Fu guys doing stuff when I was younger. And they weren't letting kids into the Kung Fu program until they were 12. And it was the day I turned 12. I was like, I'm doing this. um, so it was awesome. And it was just something that I fell in love with. And yeah, I've got my 3rd degree black belt in it now. And I have my 1st degree black belt in Goju-Ryu karate. So it's interesting. Yeah, you hear a lot of people will kind of think it's a bit of a disadvantage for me to be coming into MMA with a traditional background and not having the Muay Thai or the wrestling or the jiu-jitsu. But there's a lot more that
that's
exactly.
That's a big thing with those sports. There's to me, a lot of them are almost military oriented, and you see it, and it's just discipline. You know, it's all, you know, bow, respect everybody. That's like the way. That's the creed of those martial arts. So that's one thing which makes everything. It just means you're incredibly coachable going into those sports. And hey, you won your first MMA fight too, so they can just kind of. Yeah.
I sure did. I sure did. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, it's really interesting, and I mean, there's more things that would translate from traditional to more of the more common types of martial arts that you see in MMA than people think. So the transition wasn't too hard. I had to tighten up my striking a little bit. Kung Fu is a nice big long strikes, whereas you know, come into more boxing and Muay Thai, it's a lot tighter to the body, and that was a bit of an adjustment. But there's a lot of the kicks and stuff that are the same in Muay Thai that they are in Kung Fu, so that was nice. It wasn't starting from scratch.
There you go. Well, at least you had a good fundamentals background to those sports. And once again, it's just a discipline. It's a lot of the same thing. At the end of the day, my coach says every combat sport, martial art, it's just the same thing. You're learning the anatomy system. You're just kind of going into each thing, understanding how to take that anatomy system down systematically. And that's most of the time what we call them, you know, the sweet science of boxing and stuff, and with everything else too. You're learning to dissect stuff. So that's amazing.
Exactly.
A school program. Wait, so in Canada, there's a school program during lunch period that allows you to. Yeah, see, in the States, we couldn't get away with that. No way. No. Too many psychos out there. But seriously, like, explain that a little bit more.
Yeah. So through the traditional martial arts dojo that I was at, Talek Martial Arts, it's here in Kingston.
Okay.
Started a program in the city where they go into the schools 1 lunch hour a week. And for the lunch recess, they teach karate.
Right.
So the kids sign up, and they get to do a little belt test at the end of it because it's for an entire semester.
Oh, that's awesome.
And I think I was the 1st or 2nd year of the program starting in the city is when I started in the program, and now it's in almost every city or every school in the city. Right. It was fun. I got to actually go to my daughter's school and teach the program to her, which was really cool.
That might have been a bit of a smack to the face, though. Not in a bad way, but it was like, whoa. You know.
Yeah. I was like, oh, we're at this point. Okay. But yeah, it's kind of cool to be able to see that the program was so successful over 20 years to the point where some of us who started in the program are now having kids in the program, or we're teaching the programs. Right. So I mean, I haven't taught that in a couple years, but it's how I got my start, so it'll always mean a little bit something.
So that actually went into my next question for you, was, do you still teach at all at that original place? But that's still amazing. That's a really cool story. I always love hearing stuff like that. So you went from actually starting in the program as a kid, the same school too, or no?
Yep.
Oh my God.
Same school.
So the same school, the same area, and you must be a bit of a local legend now with that stuff. That's amazing. That's really cool.
Thanks.
And then you just go right into teaching it. Yeah. And does your daughter understand the magnitude of that yet, or no? Too young?
I don't know. She's sitting here nodding beside me, so I don't know. She's telling me to talk about her more.
Well, go ahead. You know, talk about her more. How about you know, not many people that are mothers actually step into the cage. You know, that is something that I know Michelle Watterson always talked about. She wants to be the first mom champ and stuff like that too. I don't know a whole lot of the other females that fight on Cage Wars. I believe really the only other one was someone who I trained with, Jennifer. I cannot pronounce her last name anymore. I don't know why. But she fought. I know she had her son. And she
Yeah,
fought
well,
for
I
Cage
know
Wars.
there's Liz
Yep.
Gaglia. I'm gonna probably say her name
Yep.
wrong, and I know Kim Benincasa also has kids.
Okay. And
Um,
Amanda
but I
Brundage, I
think,
believe. I could be
yeah, and
wrong.
Amanda.
Yep.
Yeah. So, but which is kind of cool that there's at least four of us, which
Right.
is awesome, you know. And but yeah, it's a pretty small club to be a part of. A mom MMA fighter.
And
So
that's really cool though, especially that's a whole other job in and of itself, like being a parent in general, but being a mother, that's kind of like that's the position. You're
yeah.
the boss. What she says goes. That's how it worked growing up for me anyway. But yeah, and that's really cool too, especially because a lot of them got into it after they had their kids too. Now you were doing
Yeah.
traditional martial arts your whole career, but I believe like with Amanda, I think she just started doing it for fun. And then someone said, "You want to fight?" And she's like, "Sure, I'll do that." And she just like ingrained herself into it,
She
which is
took off
awesome.
running with it, which
Yeah.
is great because, I mean, I met Amanda at the Cage Wars at the fight.
Hmm.
We met because she braided my hair, which is like the girliest thing I've ever done, and that's the girliest story I think I've ever had. But
She fought on
um,
the same card as you, correct?
she did.
Yep.
She had the kickboxing fight,
Yep.
and really like her. I'm really glad we met. We hung out a lot after the fights, and it was just really awesome to meet her and to have someone else who was a mom to get to kind of know and
Absolutely.
reach out, and we chat every now and then still, which is great.
That's
And I
awesome.
really like her, and yeah, so it was good. It's nice.
And that's the key thing to this sport I love is that you never know who you're going to meet where. Like
Yeah.
in a million years, could you ever go to an amateur MMA card? Be like, I'm just going to meet like a good friend. Oh, she happens to be a mother fighting. That's insane. There's
Yeah.
not a whole lot of people doing that stuff. Even at the professional ranks. Like I said, I can think of Michelle Watterson off the top of my head because she publicizes that so much. But
Mhm.
Alexis Davis took time off because she had kids. Juliana Pena, I know. And the thing is, uh, I feel like people don't really appreciate it as much. Just like, why are they out for a year? Oh, they just had their kid. They can hop right back into the cage. It's like, oh, dude, there's a way bigger process to that than you're talking
Yeah.
about.
You're
One that,
like, I just pushed a human out of my own body. What do
yes.
you mean I should be able to just get back in there?
Because I don't think Juliet, because she was gone for I think over 2 years actually when
Mhm.
she had like complications with her birth, I believe,
Yeah.
which messed with a lot of things like internally, like it was sometimes it like pushes on the ovaries or something and it like pushes all the organs up or something, and she had some complication with that. And they're like, oh,
Yeah.
she'll be fine. It's like, oh, well, she needs major surgery to realign things. So, no,
Yeah.
she will not just be okay. It's something,
No.
and that's something. And there's obviously things we don't necessarily have to go into, but, there's also struggles that females have to face more than most males, and they have to take that into consideration when it comes to fighting, too. There's a lot more going into it, and that's why I shut my mouth. Every time. And I was joking with Amanda too because right before our fight, she's like, "Leave me alone. I gotta get focused." And I was busting on her. I'm like, "Okay." I said, "Gotcha. I'll see you in another week or something." Like as I was busting her, but seriously, that's it. I admire you guys for doing that. That's amazing. But that's another thing is that I see you on social media a lot, and you really are thunderous when it comes to equality, especially with that, and
Yeah.
obviously, and unfortunately, there's still that stigma that like I've met some people, oh, females shouldn't be doing this, girls shouldn't be doing, which is the dumbest thing ever, for one, in my opinion, because at my gym, I always grew up because I remember we had this girl who literally looked like Ann Wolf, and we called her Ann Wolf every day. And this girl was knocking dudes out in the gym every day. And then my coach looked at me when I was 14 years old and told me, go in and do the same to her. I said, why is that? And he said, we don't discriminate. It's the first
Yeah.
thing he said.
Yeah.
So I've always grown up in that, like, when girls ask me to roll them, I don't care. I'm going for the move. If I see you need help with something, I'll show you help. But me personally, I think when people say those things, it's stupid. But going back to you specifically, there's Shins to Chins. We all know our favorite friend on there.
Oh, goodness.
But, and a lot of it revolves around, oh, this female looks this way, or this girl fighter looks like that. I wish she fought more because of this. As someone that actually has genuine skill and who's actually trying to do more with the sport, and granted, I assume you would have fought another once or twice had it not been for this virus. How frustrating is that, for one, and how do you deal with that? And have you personally been heckled or have you been pettifogged by people like this over so many things for being a female?
Well, I can first speak to, you mentioned that group on Facebook that I actually left. I'm no longer a member of that group, simply because it is so disproportionate.
Yeah.
I am human just like anybody else. Absolutely. You find someone attractive, you find beauty in someone, and that's the first thing people notice. That's just human nature.
Sure.
But to solely talk about a woman and her worth as being her looks instead of her skill, her ferocity, her determination, the hard work she puts in, that really bothers me. It's very, very frustrating. You don't see it a lot with men. I mean, let's take a look at Luke Rockhold. He gets ribbed every now and then because he's legitimately a model.
Right.
But people also talk about what he does in the cage. People don't focus on the fact that, he dated Demi Lovato or he was a model, and that's all that ever gets talked about. Whereas you see a lot of women like Paige Van Zandt, Rachel Ostovich, Amanda Rebus, all of them are just, all you hear about is how they look, not what they do.
Right.
And to me, we're in a sport where that should be the last thing people are thinking about. We've chosen as women to enter a combat sport. We're not going in there because of how we think we're going to look coming out of it. Absolutely. We go in there because we love the sport, we dedicate our time to the sport, and we want to perform well in it. We don't go in there thinking, oh, I'm going to get noticed, and then all of a sudden my new job is going to be an Instagram influencer because I'm pretty, No, we go in there, we want to fight. We want to get in the cage. We pick a sport where we punch people in the face for fun.
Right.
We're not, we're not here to look pretty or to be this little pedestal gym girl. I'm not here for you to look at. I'm here to train.
Yeah.
In my personal experience, I haven't so much had I haven't had so many comments about how I look versus what I'm doing.
Sure. It's
more shock. I get more people when they find out what I do. I get but you're girly and you're pretty, and I'm like, yeah, but I also really enjoy punching people in the face.
Yeah.
It has nothing to do with my look. And then once we kind of start getting into it, people are okay. So I've never been objectified the same way, but I'm also not on the same platform as them. But I do get people who are shocked, or my dad will purposefully, if I'm coming in to teach self-defense to his grade 7 class, he'll purposefully not tell them that I'm a female, just that my name's Logan and I'm a black belt.
Right.
And then, to see all the girls be like, oh, that's so cool, but all the guys be like, oh, I thought you were going to be a dude, Yeah. You're like, even then in 12-year-olds, there's still that disparagement between a female being successful and good in martial arts versus how they look. And I am very much of the thought that it should be equality. You know, I'm really lucky
Absolutely.
at the gym that I'm at. I'm at Loyalist Martial Arts Academy in Belleville. And I'm really lucky that some of the top fighters there are female.
Right.
You know, we have Laura Berringer, who is a Canadian world champion Muay Thai fighter.
Wow.
She's phenomenal. She
I was about to say, I knew that name. She fought for K1 once or twice, right?
I believe
or Lion
so.
Fight,
Yeah.
one of the two, one of the bigger ones. I've seen her fight though. Yeah.
Yeah, and you know, she is amazing. She goes in there and she could dummy just about any guy who walks through that door, and it's unreal. And people don't look at her like, oh, she's a female. They look at her as a martial artist and a fighter.
Right.
You know, and I've even had the conversations with some of the guys at the gym where they say, we recognize that as a female, you come into this sport and you want to be treated the same.
Yeah.
You don't want us to roll you lighter. You know, we don't want to like be careful around you. And I appreciate that personally. You know, I like it when a guy will drill me in the face because my hands aren't up. Because that teaches me to keep my hands up. Whereas
Right.
if you kind of tiptoe around it and you're like, oh, she's a female, and you get this weird complex, then you're not doing me any favors. You're not helping me get better, and you're not doing yourself any favors.
Absolutely.
Because I could surprise you, or Laura could come out and just kill you. And, you know, what does that teach you? Like, you're judging someone based on how they look versus how they act and the work and the effort that they've put into getting where they are.
Which you think after the course of history, people would just get over at this point. You know what I mean? Like it's a very primitive way of thinking for me. Like I said, my friend Courtney, she comes and she just hits mitts and stuff, and she likes doing striking primarily, and she just started rolling and teaching her things. And what was it? I was rolling with her about 2 weeks ago, and I purposely kept catching her trap after trap after trap. And
Yeah.
she says, oh, you should take it easy on me. I said, listen, no one took it easy on me. And that's how I learned it. I said, listen, I'm going to show you stuff. I said, but I'm not just going to let you roll around and get whatever you want, because at the end of the day, you know, I know some jiu-jitsu academies will do this, or wrestling schools, you know, especially wrestlers. I remember stepping on the mat, not understanding a single thing I was doing, and then getting my ass handed to me every single day until really I didn't get good until my second year of college. Because that's just all that you have to, because they're not just going to stop their progress because, oh, he's a beginner. Oh, she's a girl. Oh, shit. No, it doesn't work that way. You know, and that's the dumbest thing ever. We had a few girls come into our wrestling school in college and worked out harder. I mean, we had a couple of heavyweights that were dragging their feet behind them and stuff like that. And the thing is, for me, once everyone's like, man, I'm surprised by that. Me personally, I come from my coach and from my boxing coach, and I consider him like another father for one. But he always tells me, for one, we're spirit. There ain't no color to it. There ain't no ethnicity. We're all spirit. We're all one person. We're all human beings. And he said, and at the end, once again, he looks at me and says, I do not discriminate. That's all he kept saying. So every time we get a girl comes in, there's no special treatment because we see you like you see me, coach, and everyone else in this gym. And so that's awesome, especially at Loyalist. You know, I've met the coach several times at a couple fights. And I sincerely can't remember his name, which is unfortunate, but he's one of the nicest people on the planet. And I believe in Watertown, actually, he had a female fight on that card too. And she just...
Yeah, so his name's Jay Davies.
Yes.
Yeah, and he's a phenomenal coach.
Absolutely.
I've gone through a couple coaches, which personally for me, like, I don't love. I'm a very loyal person, and so for me to have gone through 2 coaches prior takes a lot for me to do. Once I get to a gym, I'm really, really loyal. It just, when I moved to Loyalist, Jay really took the time to make sure that I felt comfortable, to know what my plan was. He is I've never met somebody so dedicated to his fighters as I have Jay. He'll constantly tell us, like, he's at the gym more than he is his own house. He cares so much about the fighters. He's almost like the coach you see in a movie where you can message him and say, look, I'm having a bad day.
Yeah.
You can talk to him about anything. That if you really needed him to, he would drop whatever he's doing to come help you if you needed it. And he knows really well how to talk to each fighter. So he doesn't just generic word vomit to everybody the same thing to try and get them moving. No, and he knows exactly how and what to say and when to say it to his fighter to get them to perform the best. So what he may say to me could be completely different than what he's going to say to somebody else. And I think that's a huge asset to have in a coach, someone who knows their fighters, knows what they need to be motivated. Absolutely. And knows how to do the best to have their back to make them feel like they're going to go out there and put it all on the line for that coach, because some coaches don't do that. So yeah, Jay is just phenomenal. I can't say enough about Jay. So
there's some good pad work people out there, is what I say. Pad and mitt work people, mitt holders. Yeah. And then there's a coach. And unfortunately, you see that a lot, especially on the amateur scene. You see a lot of those in the back, and you love them. They're the nicest people ever, but they don't get it. But
no, they don't.
But now going back to and that's awesome, and what a shout out to that guy. Hopefully when this COVID stuff ends, and I can now enter the country of Canada after my whole thing with getting caught at the border. No, I didn't do anything illegal for those listening, but I don't believe it when they say Canadians are the nicest people anymore. I don't buy that at all anymore.
The border patrol is its own section, though. They don't really count. They have to be mean.
Because they were. Oh boy, I'll never forget when I did all the steps they told me. I stayed a week in Messina with my family, and I go back to the border, and they detained me again. And I was gonna I was gonna go work for Hayabusa. Is basically what was happening. And I wanted to write a complaint because the other people at the border apparently did something that basically means that I waste my money and effort just to be like, they were purposely doing it to be a jerk, is what the other officers told me, because they've seen it so many times. No. I went to one border station and then I went to the other because I was told to go to the other one.
Yeah.
So I went to the other one, and basically what wound up happening was they tell me, yeah, this happened. There's nothing you can do. It would take 3 to 4 months for Hayabusa to do this for you to actually gain entry into the country. I said, oh, okay, great. Can I write a complaint about the other guy for stringing me along? And the guy's like, yeah, sure, go ahead. And so I write the complaint, and then you know what he does? Takes it, rips it up for me. I said, what's that for? He's just like, so I did you a favor, and here's why. You can write out another one. You can waste another 5 minutes of your time. And he says, but you're coming into this country against 12 other officers' view, and you want to write a formal complaint. And he said, that sounds pretty dumb, doesn't it? I said, no, because that's how a justice system works, but okay.
Oh, no.
So then they sent me back home after. No, the first time was horrible. They detained me for 3.5 hours. Asking me if I had a computer, right? I build computers, and it was just my work. It was just my work computer. They had me take it apart and look at it, checking for bombs and stuff. I'm like, I did.
Oh my goodness!
I want to work for a boxing glove
We
company.
disown them.
What?
They're not. I'm revoking their Canadian citizenship right now
because they were not nice people to L for whatever reason. But sorry for getting sidetracked. There was going back to being a female in the sport. I wanted to read something, a couple things actually about someone that I have here actually.
Okay.
So on the other side, I actually have a few questions with what you said. I know you mentioned someone like Rachel Ostovich, which there's I don't know if you heard, but the people in my gym, because my office right outside, they're playing table tennis. They get insanely competitive. It's insane.
I heard, yeah.
Oh my goodness. Anyway, basically, there's Rachel Ostovich, and she's fighting soon, and I'll go into that. But I wanted to read this one. And it's on the other opposite, and it's extremely. I'll give you a chance to ask of who do you think this was about. Uh,
Okay.
she she needs to be way more prettier, or let's see, she needs to be way prettier to get anyone to watch her fights. Skill doesn't make it for girls anymore. And can you guess who that was about?
Ooh.
Who I
Um,
think's probably the best woman fighter to ever step into the UFC.
is it Amanda Nunes?
No, no. Well, yeah, she's up there too, but no. Actually, Joanna Jędrzejczyk. They're saying that about when you hear something like that for literally, who's a amateur and professional Muay Thai champion over. I think her record was 76-3. Right?
Yeah, she's phenomenal.
You hear something like that, and you as a woman, what is your first response to something like that, and how do you think you can stop ignorance like that from happening? I mean, for one, like you can't judge that going into the sport, obviously, but hearing that for you, how upset would that get you, or just more? You just think ignorance is bliss, and some people should just shut their mouth.
It's kind of a combination of both.
Mm,
Just for me personally, reading that, it really just goes back again to my belief that, again, we're getting judged not for what we do, but for what we look like.
right,
Joanna is arguably one of the best female MMA fighters in history.
right.
She is amazing. She had so many title defenses. You know, that fight with Zhang Weili was probably one of the best UFC fights,
Period.
period.
Yeah. It's in
Period.
my top five for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. It was an unreal fight. It was completely savage. Both of them were just swinging. It was amazing. And then, so to look at something like that in arguably one of the best fights in UFC history, we're not looking at that at all. We're looking at what she looks like. And for the record, I think Joanna's adorable, but it has nothing. But again, like, she's not there to look pretty.
Absolutely.
She's there to fight. You know, so on one hand, there's that reaction. And I mean, if people listening could have seen my face when you were reading it, it was like blown away. But then the other half is you also have to look at the source. What is this person's record? What is their involvement in the sport?
Sure.
Are they just a couch fan where, you know, they talk, they blow smoke out their ass when they're
99.1%.
yeah, you know, yeah. Where, like, are they just blowing smoke at their ass because it gives them attention for a little bit?
Sure.
Or are they someone who actually knows what's going on in the sport? Because I guarantee you, if it's someone who actually knows what's going on in the sport, they're not looking at Joanna's face. They're looking at her record and her skill and her title defenses and the fact that she's got arguably one of the best fights in UFC history. You know, so it's about it's my initial reaction is to be really annoyed by it and to be like, well, this is stupid. Why do we care?
Right.
You know, and then the other then I kind of think about it for a second. My reaction is, well, where is it coming from? Does this person's opinion actually matter in the grand scheme of things, or are they just saying stuff they know is going to get them the attention that they want for 5 minutes?
Right.
So, yeah.
I will never forget the night that she won the title from Carla Esparza, because everyone was at my house. I think maybe I might have been a senior in high school at that point, and a few of my friends were asking me, like, who is that, and like commenting on her looks and stuff. I said hey, you keep saying it. I said, I can tell you what though, she can crack. And they're like, oh no, and they were looking at Carla Esparza, and she modeled at one point all these other things too, or whatever, and they said, oh no, she's gonna win because she's a wrestler. It was just a one-sided ass beating, really is what it was. And I told them, I said, you know, you can't look at that for that. Like with people with Ronda Rousey, watch a lot of her fights because of that, because she did like while she was in Strikeforce, did the modeling thing, and she was with Playboy and a couple other things, and people went off that. And you know, to me, I wish it brought more eyes to the sport once again because of the skill that they actually bring to it. But on the other end of that of that coin too. You know, it's like a quadruple side coin. I've said that a couple
Yeah.
times, but um, when you have, say, a competitor, all right, who is, you know, say a Rachel Ostovich, right, with her,
Yep.
um, do you personally think that she has been kept around because of her looks at all? Because some people get that impression because every single thing that they've done with her, like there was a Tuesday night, not Tuesday night contender series, Dana White looking for the fight episode when they were in Hawaii, and the only shots they had of Rachel was her in a bikini, her swimming, slow motion shots, and all that stuff. And it was, to
Yeah.
me, I said, "Are you serious?" I said, "She's fighting for you and giving heart and limb, and you want to do that to her? You know, that's not fair." She probably didn't know that either. But do you think that because of looks that the UFC, Bellator, all these other people would actually hire a female and put them into a deeper end of competition because of their looks for the viewership on that end? Do you think that's happened yet? Or do you think it will happen?
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely. I think it does. I know Rachel fought on the weekend and lost to Mazzani, um, and that puts her record at 4-6.
Right.
You look at some of the guys who have better records than that who are getting cut.
Yeah.
You know, at some point, and I mean, I think Rachel's done a good job of marketing herself. Let's be real. She knows she's hot.
Yeah.
She's done a good job of marketing herself, and to the point where the UFC is going to keep her around because she's that hot girl from Instagram
Sure.
that gets a lot of viewers. You know, and I think Paige Van Zandt has done the same thing. She got dropped by UFC,
Yeah.
but she got picked up by Bare Knuckle because she's hot. Like,
Yeah.
Paige is not a fantastic fighter.
Right.
She, you know, but because of her looks, she got a lot farther than she should have, you know, and I think it absolutely happens where people, women who are good looking, who attract viewership solely based on that fact, are kept around longer than some of their counterparts who aren't Instagram models, just to have that marketability. And for me, I don't know these people personally, obviously. So my question is it a strategy that they've used to market themselves that way so that they do stay relevant and they do stay in the UFC? Or is it something that they've just kind of accepted at this point moving forward because it keeps them there?
Right.
You know? I think Paige very much has accepted it and used it as a way to market herself, and she's not been shy about saying that she gets paid more for Instagram ads and modeling on Instagram than she did in the UFC.
Right.
Paige has actively used that and used the fact that she knows she's pretty to get her where she is. I think she's capitalized on it, and it's worked out really well for her. But there are other women where, you know, you mentioned that Hawaii search where the only thing they're showing of Rachel Ostovich is her in a bikini.
Yeah.
You know, did she okay that? Or was that the UFC just being like, look, you're hot. People think you're hot. We're going to do this.
Right.
And now she's kind of just accepted that that's her role.
Which, unfortunately, that was probably the latter, which upsets me.
Yeah.
Regardless of what her record is and anything, there's a small percentage of human beings that actually do something like she does. You know,
absolutely.
Because people think, oh, well, there's like 600 people on the UFC's roster. I said, okay, 600 out of how many billion people on this planet did something. You know? And then they're like, well, there's probably, you can't say I don't think you can safely say there's 100,000 people in the world that actually actively compete in the sport. I really don't. I don't think there's that many, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't even go into detail, but you still want to trash her and all these other things because she's pretty and all these other things. It's just that
there's other things, you know. And I mean, and I'm not saying, obviously I've had one amateur fight. I've been around martial arts my whole life, so I do know what I'm looking at when I watch it. And obviously any one of these people could probably pick me apart, no problem. But you
Keep
know,
training.
it's just for me.
Keep training.
Yeah, exactly. One day they won't be able to, but
There you
right
go.
now. But you know, for me, I look at Rachel Ostovich and I look at her record is 4-6. She
Right.
has a losing record. How many guys in the UFC can you say have a losing record like that are still marketed the same way she has, let alone that still have a contract?
CM
You know,
Punk.
so I
No,
think
I'm
it.
sorry. That's not fair. That's not fair. That's an insult, even to Rachel Austin. No, don't worry about CM Punk. No,
You
really,
know,
really, the
but
only
I mean
guy I can think of
realistically,
is. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
no, I was just gonna say, you know, realistically, like there's maybe a couple that you could think of, but they're not even really popular fighters. They're
Right.
just kind of fringe fighters, and you know, they're there so that people who are on their way up have someone to fight to get on their way up, you know,
Right.
whereas they still market Rachel Ostovich as a big draw. Whereas and that's solely based on her looks. It's not because of her record. Now, don't get me wrong, she looked a lot better than I thought she was going to on Saturday. There's definite improvement, but at the same time, if it was a male counterpart, how long would they be around?
Right. I mean, you go back to Mark Hunt, who was in that situation. You know, the UFC, when UFC bought out Pride, they wanted to buy Mark Hunt out of his contract. And then he wins one or two fights, and he still has a losing record of like 7 wins and like 14 losses, and they're still keeping him around. You know,
Yeah,
and there was that. That was just because it's like, oh, there's a possibility he'll knock someone dead. You know, stuff like that.
yeah.
But for me, my other question is, do you think that maybe they're athletically, like challenged maybe in some ways, or do you think they just simply focus too much time on other facets of life than training, or do you think they could just improve to get to said championship level, or do you think this is not possible for someone for a Paige Van Zant or for a Rachel Ostovich?
Um, Quite frankly, I don't think Paige Van Zant could.
Right.
Um, I mean, she is Instagram heavy, and
Right.
a lot of those Instagram posts are her working out and training.
Sure.
So she's putting just as much, if not more time into training as she is Instagram.
Right.
And you look at her past performances, and it's just, you know, she got absolutely destroyed by Amanda Ribas in seconds. Like
Yeah.
it wasn't a long fight. I think Rachel Ostovich probably has potential to get back into a winning record. From what I saw on Saturday night, she looks like she's been putting the work in and training. And
Sure.
Mazzani just, you know, I mean, she's a beast. She just dropped down a weight class and she came in there and did what she needed to do. But I think it's a fine line. I think it depends on the fighter and how much they want to capitalize on their looks and how other people have marketed them in terms of what they want to do. So I don't know. I think that's a difficult question for me
Right.
to just answer because I think there's a lot of different facets involved in the answer.
You'd almost have to be around them to see what they're actually doing.
Exactly.
Because there was one girl that was coming through here at our gym, and she said, "Oh, I got my boxing license and all these other things," but she was only coming to take pictures in the mirror, and it's the same thing with the guys too. And the
Yeah.
thing I won't, because we're not one of those gyms that's like, oh, we'll let him get a lesson and get beat up, and no, we just don't let you fight. Like it's just that's it.
Yeah.
You have to train. I mean, how often do you? I'm sure Amanda Nunes, because she needs to be a PR machine. You're the champion of the UFC, but how often do you see her just like post half naked pictures inside, into a mirror saying no? Most of her posts I see on her Instagram. If I don't really watch Instagram all that much. I post to it. I try anyway, but but most of what I see is it's her wrestling, it's her hitting the mitts, it's her running,
Yeah.
it's her something that you'd expect a world champion to do, and
Exactly.
that's the thing that frustrates me sometimes is on the other side of everything too is someone like Paige Van Zant or Rachel Ostovich have complained all everyone's talking about is my looks. It's like, well, I mean, obviously we can't, as a guy, I can for sure say, I'm not one of them to just like say, oh, don't just sexualize every woman you see, obviously, but you kind of are doing that most of the time with Paige Vance and Rachel Ostovich with their post on Instagram and everything else. They're like, oh, I make more money doing this. Half of her posts are of basically her nude with like her husband or something like that. And it's like, so where's your focus at? For me, personally, I don't care what you do. I mean, hell, if you're just a buzzsaw going through the division like it's like you're a hot knife through butter, right? I do what you want. You're doing something right. But when you've lost like 6 in a row, maybe it's time to reevaluate how you train or something. Is what I would say.
Yeah, and I think the thing for me too is, I mean, social media is used to put what you think is going to be your best
Sure.
foot forward for everybody else to see. So for me, it's kind of a fine line between, you can post what you want. I have no problem with Paige Van Zandt or Rachel Ostovich posting those pictures because they obviously feel good about themselves.
Sure.
They're like in it. They want to post it. They're feeling good. They have every right to. And I think for me to sit there and solely judge based on what an Instagram post isn't giving them credit as fighters and female fighters. But at the same time, I think there is that fine balance, like you've said, of, well, people are only judging me for my looks. And I think that's where the disconnect is, and that's where women have a really hard time in the sport. I think it's because as women and men as well, you like to post when you feel good. You like to post when you look good. You want to show off when you're feeling that way. And I think the big difference is that they have a couple million followers and I have 700.
Yeah.
So each individual person as well posts different things that make them feel good. Amanda Nunes feels good when she's training, when she's wrestling, when she's running.
Right.
I know her wife just had a baby, so she's probably posting stuff like that. So for me to sit here and judge someone about whether they're putting in the work or not based on an Instagram post is, I think, a little bit shallow of me, especially when I'm talking about, we want to be recognized for all this stuff and, we can't just be judging women on their looks. And I think that ties into social media as well. That is still part of their look. So whether we see all of their training posts or not, that doesn't mean I have any right to judge what they're doing, and I just think, I don't know. Like I said, it's a super complicated, fine line issue that I'm never going to have the right answer to, but I just know how I feel personally, and I very much try to live my life, but I don't ever know the full story unless someone tells it to me.
Absolutely.
So, trying to judge by a social media post about whether a UFC fighter is putting in enough work or not is hard, right? I mean, you want to have that initial of, wow, okay, like another bikini post, like, why don't you go to the gym?
Right.
But then you're like, well, she obviously goes to the gym because look at that bikini post.
See, I never thought about it that way. I will be entirely honest. That is a very good point. That's an extremely good point.
So it's just, I don't know, because I don't know these people, and I don't know, everybody does everything differently. So I don't know. I think some of it is probably a bit of a play on it, and they do get objectified a little bit. And then part of me probably would guess that they like the attention, which is why they do it. So I think it's heavy-handed to try and pick one or the other.
Wise words. See, that I wanted to focus a lot on that because you don't often hear people speak of it, especially in a sport like this. Everyone's like, shut up. It's like mental health too. And like combat
Yeah.
sports, people never ever talk about that
No,
because
they don't.
it was just ingrained into our soul that, hey, you could bring this into you with competition and lose because you have this on your mind. Which was a big
Yeah.
request by you, actually. I've been meaning to get to it and make a couple videos on it because there's not enough out there on it,
No,
especially
there
in the world of
absolutely
combat sports.
isn't.
When I went into college, actually, and we had to do our athletic orientation every year, and
Hmm.
there was a TED talk we had to watch from a former basketball player who actually happened to be a female from the University of North Carolina, and she basically said after she graduated from college, she gained an enormous amount of weight. She was completely destroyed. Her degree was not getting her anywhere because she just signed up for something that she thought was fine and she was going to play basketball, go to the WMBA and all these other things, and she blew her knee, she did all these other things, and she just said in being in college sports, because you had to do all these assignments, you had to do all these other things, and it just completely destroys you. But the only thing that your coach and everything says is you can go to the counselor, basically,
Yeah.
and then they just at the end of the day they might write you a prescription for like an antidepressant without gauging anything and stuff like that. And she said for a long time, really until she reached 30, it messed up her life. And that's basketball. That's not a sport
Yeah.
where you're going in and getting like beat up and stuff like that. I can recall when I fought. Actually, it was I'd say after I won, even that fight when I won my championship, I was severely depressed during my bouts, and people are like, "Oh man, you're just sad." No, it's different. It really is.
Yeah.
You're not just sad, and I'll ask you about your personal experiences as well.
Yeah.
But I remember I fought Mark Worthington, and my depression was horrible. I fought Drew Torrance, my depression was horrible. I just did enough to stay safe, is all I told people. And then I remember fighting Yuri Panfarov, and that was I knew it was bad when I wasn't getting nervous before the bout, right? And it was like that with him, Corey Norman, and Corey was going through his own stuff too. A lot of stuff happened, and then my last fight with Billy Brennan, which I love the guy, but I won. I don't care what anyone tells me. I won, but but I was going through those things, and the amount that it actually affects your performance, or what your coaches tell you is somewhat true. You bring that into something, it might affect it. But instead of burying it, I think people should really be a lot more open. Seek the help that you need. And I wanted your opinion on that, and how because you've done stuff with psychology, and so I know you're a paralegal now, correct?
I am.
But
Yeah.
you did stuff with psychology at one point, I believe. Am I thinking of something different or?
No, I took a little bit of it in university.
Sure.
I'm I also, in my capacity as a paralegal, I do a lot of criminal defense.
Sure.
And a lot of that is also mental health related.
Absolutely.
Um, but I also deal with it on a regular basis. So it is something that I feel really passionate about. And you're right, people don't talk about it enough, not even just in MMA in general, but
Sure.
people, there's still this really huge stigma about people with mental health issues, and whether it's being made up or it's something that you should just be able to get over, it's so much more complicated than that. And I really do think that people need to speak out about their experiences more often.
Yeah. And I think that's just an old way of thinking now, is burying everything. A big example of mine is it turned. I never knew this, but clinical depression, which people think, oh, that just means you're sad all the time. For one, that would be chronic depression
Yep. Yep.
if it was consistent. And for two, clinical just means there's a quite literal chemical misfire in your head.
Yeah.
You can't control it.
Yep.
You need something to balance it. And that was something with my grandfather, actually, growing up, and he never addressed it even till well into his 70s. There were some days he just didn't do stuff, and there were some days he was just moping around. And I never knew that it could be hereditary. And
Yeah.
that's the crazy thing with him. But I asked him I said, well, why don't you ever approach it? And he said, well, back in my day, if you did that, you got fired from your job. Back in my day, you got razzed on for it. And he funny enough, he said, well, and obviously he didn't think this way all the time, but he's just like, well, a woman complained is what he said. Like as a joke, but
Yeah.
but he was saying that, and then I remember finally getting the help I needed, and man, I got diagnosed with it when I was 12. So
did I.
yeah, and I never even focused on it until I was 21 years of age at all. And I realized, especially after trying to wean myself off antidepressants once or twice, it doesn't work for me. It did not work out. It did not work out well, and it was just downward spiral.
Yeah.
But talk about your experiences with mental health and what you'd like people to do or actively go out of their way to try embrace it. Don't run away from it. Embrace it, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. So I was also really young when I was first dealing with depression. I did therapy on and off for a long time. Then when I was 16, I ended up getting into a pretty abusive relationship with my daughter's father.
Oh, I'm sorry about
that. It led to her, so it's all good. But so I got pregnant when I was 17. I had my daughter when I was 18. Yeah. It's an institution here, so gotcha. We're good. But I got really bad postpartum depression after I had my daughter. I was 18. I was alone. I had no idea what was going on. It took a few months before I really figured it out. And the only reason I figured it out was because I was just crying one night, and my dad came in and said, "You've got a problem and you need to go get it looked at." Yeah. I remember the doctor when I went in. She's no longer my doctor. I went in to talk to her and I said, "I think I have postpartum depression," and for someone who's 18, that took a lot to say. Yeah. And she said, "Well, why would you think that?"
Oh my God.
And I said, here's all the list of reasons. I wasn't able to take care of my daughter. I was really lucky that I lived with my parents at the time. Right. I just physically couldn't do it. I was crying all the time. I had no motivation to get up and shower. I couldn't, I was breastfeeding my daughter, and it was like that was a struggle, which meant my kid almost, not that it ever got to that point, but potentially my kid could have not been fed because my depression was so bad. Right. And here I have a medical professional grilling me on why I think I have it and not wanting to prescribe me or give me any of the help.
That's the dumbest thing.
So it's awful. So and then so she did end up prescribing me an antidepressant that didn't work. I had really bad side effects with it. Yeah. And instead of going back to her, I just stopped taking them and I tried to deal with it. About 3 or 4 years ago, so I'm 28, so I was 24, 25, somewhere in there, I had a really bad low again, to the point where I went to the doctor and I just said, "I don't know what's going on. I feel like my entire life is about to implode. I'm like struggling to breathe. I don't know what's happening." And he said, "Well, your depression's back." Tried a couple new meds, and I still have highs and lows. The last 2 weeks, for example, have been really bad for me.
I'm sorry.
It's part of it, you know. But people don't expect it from me. I have.
You are a very happy person, it seems. But most of the people,
exactly it.
Most of the people that do are very good at hiding it.
That's exactly it. So it's called clinical functional depression. Yep. Which means that I can basically fake it. Yep. To the point where people don't know, but inside it's killing me. So the last 2 weeks, for example.
I do that too.
Yeah, right? Hello. Welcome to the club.
Yay.
But, like the last 2 weeks, like there were days where I left work because I was so mentally exhausted by 12 o'clock that I couldn't finish my job. So I'd go home and I'd sleep for 3 hours, 4 hours sometimes before picking up my daughter from school. on the weekend, I turned my phone off on Friday night and didn't turn it back on until the fights had started on Saturday.
Right.
And my daughter was with my parents, and my dad ended up coming to the house to check on me.
Right.
And I was okay, but, that's also the thing that people don't see is sometimes life gets so exhausting when you have a mental illness that you cease to be able to function. Today has been my first good day in 2 weeks.
Right.
I managed to get up and shower before work.
Right.
I brushed my teeth, and like to most people that doesn't sound like anything big. But for me, as someone who's dealt with severe depression over the last 2 weeks, that's a huge milestone.
Yeah.
And then you get into a sport like MMA where you're expected to be super tough. You're supposed to be this brave, badass person that nothing bothers, and like it makes it that much harder to be able to say, like, look, I'm not okay. I'm not doing well, I haven't been to training in 2 weeks.
Right.
Because the thought of getting in the car and driving there is daunting, And so and I'm very lucky because, like I said, Jay is fantastic. My coach, I said to him outright, I'm not having a good 2 weeks. My goal is to make it in on Wednesday. And he just said, keep your head up. You're a fantastic person. We'll see you when you're able to come in.
Yeah.
So having people to understand that it is literally a chemical imbalance, there's nothing I can do about it.
Right.
If I wouldn't wish to be like this. I'm not doing it for attention. I don't want to be incapable of taking care of my 10-year-old daughter. I don't want to be incapable of going to training, which is this outside of her, the thing that gives me the most joy in my life.
Right.
I absolutely love it. But for people in the sport to all of a sudden see somebody who goes to the gym 3-4 times a week to not being there for 2 weeks,
yeah,
they don't get it. Or, I know I've been guilty of this, posting something on Facebook saying, ask for help. People don't understand how hard it is to actually ask for help.
Right.
And I think a lot of the onus needs to stop being put on those with mental illnesses, and it should be other people stepping up and checking in. I haven't been at the gym in 2 weeks, and, there's been very few people who have reached out and been like, hey, this is weird. Are you okay? Instead you see posts of, hey, reach out if you need me.
Right.
And I'm not saying this to like single anyone at the gym out or make them feel bad, but it's people just don't understand, instead of having me try to do it when I can't even get up and shower.
Yeah.
Why, like, it needs to start being more common for other people to reach out, and I know I've been guilty of it, and as someone who's been on both sides, I try to do a better job of, maybe if I'm noticing someone's not around, or, I'm noticing that maybe they're starting to post things that are a little bit more upsetting or dark, I reach out instead and say, hey, are you okay?
Yeah.
Hey, if you need me to check in on you every now and then, that's totally something I can do, and it's still so stigmatized, and it's really unfortunate because it's a chemical imbalance that nobody can control.
Absolutely.
And to be ostracized and made fun of or told that you're making it up and to just get over it is just very ignorant of the fact that the person who has this mental illness is not in control of it.
Absolutely.
They need outside help, and you need the people in society as a whole to start understanding that, it's like any other illness. When I broke my knee, I didn't go out there and do it for attention.
Right.
Just as the same as when I have a bad depression period, I'm not going out there and doing it for attention. I have no control over it whatsoever.
If anything,
And
we're
I see
very
it
secluded when we're in those moods. Like, yeah, keep
absolutely,
away from us. We don't want anything to do with people, and then
absolutely.
that's why we welcome when people, we'll push away a little bit. No, I'm fine, I'm fine. And then you understand after a couple minutes, you're like, oh, this actually feels way better. Keep talking to me, please. you know,
Exactly, exactly. Because it's very lonely.
yeah,
And that's the thing people don't understand is you could be in a room full of people and be having a bad mental health episode, and it's lonely because nobody except for yourself is experiencing it.
excuse me.
And that's the reality of it. And I mean, I see a lot of it in my work as well in criminal defense.
Yeah.
I have a client right now who in a catatonic state ended up assaulting a nurse.
Oh.
And they're trying to proceed with charges when this guy was unresponsive and didn't eat for the next 5 days on the mental health floor.
Right.
So even in our justice system here in Canada, we're still seeing people with severe mental health issues being prosecuted as criminals with mental intent to be able to perform the criminal act, when that's not at all the case, because it's a mental health illness that someone can't control. And unfortunately for this guy, it was a violent incident, but it's still out of his control. And for people to look at that, they see a headline, they don't see the illness or the person. And it's just, people need to start understanding, I think, ultimately, and I've said it 700 times in the last 5 minutes, but it's not the person who's ill. It's not their fault.
Right.
It's a chemical imbalance, and there's nothing they can do about it. So to stigmatize that is just, it's ignorant, and it doesn't make any sense. And more people struggle with mental illnesses than you'd think. And so when my advice would be, when you're posting something about, mental illness not being real or it being an issue on Facebook, there's so many people there on your friends list that either know someone with a mental illness or have a mental illness, and they're seeing you post that. So that's a not so quick rundown of my experience and thoughts on mental health. So
that's perfect. People need to hear it though, because it's even just one or two people saying it goes leaps and bounds. Like there's personally I have two friends in my friend group, and I finally just told them the other day, I said, listen, if you feel this way, go to your damn doctor. I said, I can only do so much as your friend. I said, and the last thing I want to do is tell you something incorrect. I said, go to your doctor. And he's like, well, my doctor's an ass. I said, ask for a second opinion. They in the U.S., they legally have to give you that. You can ask for a third, fourth, or fifth. You know what I mean? And that's all I told him. I said, listen, like it's starting to take hold of your life and control it. There's this app that I use that, sorry, I blanked out. I almost said something. I almost said my girlfriend, but that ended. But, but she showed me this app. It's called, Mind Shift. Yeah. Mind Shift. And I go through it every day. There's like these, little calming down exercises, or there's these, and it gives you, like, obviously you can't self-diagnose yourself, but I remember running down the list of like general panic, general anxiety, general, negative thoughts, worrying, depression. And I was literally listing everything. And two or three of my friends were like, oh, I experienced none of that because they don't have it. Obviously they're fine. Yeah. And then my friend was just silent, and he goes like, holy shit. I said, yeah, it's
a big time when you go through those lists and all of a sudden you're like, oh yeah, that's all of them.
Yeah.
Oh God, it's every single one of them, and you're like, wait, like, it's a scary moment sometimes, I think, when you look at it and you're like, oh my God, there's something really wrong with me, like what is happening?
Right.
But that's better than sitting there and not knowing and just thinking you're absolutely alone when you're not, and it's not your fault. And my biggest thing that I see all over the place that I think is so true, and I've said it to so many people, is if you choose to talk to me, I'd rather stay up and talk to you at 2 a.m. than be sitting at your funeral listening to people say
Absolutely.
all the great things about you that you were too ill to be able to realize about yourself.
Absolutely.
And I think that's huge too, as someone who could maybe be a support system for someone with a mental illness. Yeah, it's hard for you to say, look, man, I think you have a problem and you need to go to a doctor. You know, it's scary. You don't know how that person's going to react. You don't know if they're going to be mad or angry and never talk to you. But sometimes you need to be that person to say, look, man, you either need to go see your doctor and figure out what this is, or I'm going to end up talking about you at your funeral because this is the path you're going down. And sometimes people with mental illness, that's what we need to hear, because when we're undiagnosed, we don't know, we don't know that when we sit there, we're bringing the whole room down, or we're sad, or we haven't talked to somebody in 4 days, or it doesn't register that we're snapping at people really quickly, or you could say, oh, I thought that dress was blue and it's purple, and you start crying, like,
Yeah.
so
It's so true though. Like
it is like,
for me, it's just like, I remember actually being crushed one day. I was leaving Walmart and I thought I actually lost my car. I was just looking three spots down, and I was in the middle of the parking lot just looking up, and I'm like, why? Like, just, like,
it does, it
it messes
happens,
with you
like,
with the smallest and dumbest shit, but
it
it
really does.
just what it is. But it
Yeah,
translates well into combat sports sometimes, I feel, because I also notice most people like this also are a little bit OCD with things, so they gotta get it
a
perfect.
little bit.
Like Dwayne Ludwig's a guy who talks about, he says, "Oh, I'm a genuinely happy person, but depression ravaged a lot of his life. But look at that guy; he's the most OCD individual in the sport, probably. Good lord, he
Yeah,
just talking a million miles per hour, can't get him to stop. But
yeah.
I'm happy it's being addressed a little bit more now, and especially someone like you talking about it, even on an amateur scene. Because it affects people every single day. There's no ifs, ands, or
Absolutely
buts
does.
about it. It does affect people every single day.
It does.
That's awesome. And hopefully, when people hear this, they can understand that it is okay. It is normal, because I want to say it's some alarming statistic of over like 80, yeah, they're leaving, sorry. It's an overwhelming statistic, I think, of like the upper 70s or lower 80s of people that, for one, know something's wrong and don't seek help. Not diagnosed, that purposely don't go get diagnosed. And that's the sad part about it. To me, is
Yeah.
that they'd prefer to just be secluded on it and unfortunately do the latter of what you were talking about than just go get something. Or I hate the excuse, I don't want to be on medication anymore, which some people have reasons, and I had big reasons for me personally, from my past and my other thing. I wish they wouldn't stand outside my door and just yell, oh my goodness, I'm sorry. But anyway, but they there was I had stuff with me earlier in my life that didn't. I wouldn't take Tylenol if my thumb hurt or something like that,
Yeah.
stuff like that. But it turned into that I needed to do it, or else my life was going to be halted uh,
Mhm.
for such a long time. So I know I get it coming from that person, but I eventually had to, because I wasn't going to school. Like I was skipping classes, I wasn't going to practices, and all my teammates, my captains were like, what the hell, dude? Like, where are you? And all these other
Mhm.
things. So it
Yeah.
really, this, my message to anyone watching this is, for one, listen to Logan, because she's smarter than me, and for two, for two, seek the help that you need. Especially if it is, and that I'll talk to you a little later. I'm doing a radio show. Sorry, um,
Mhm.
but basically the that's the thing about mental health now is that stigma needs to be stopped. Especially, you can't have that anymore. It's horrible.
No, absolutely. And I mean, if I could, I know I've spoken a lot on it, but if I could just, you know, hammer one point home is that you can't put the onus always on the person with the mental illness to say, I need help.
Yeah.
Often that is the thought of saying that to people is so daunting sometimes. Um, but I would also say to somebody with a mental health who is struggling, find the one person that you trust, whether it's your best friend, whether it's, someone who's posted on Facebook, I'm always here.
Yeah.
If you can reach out and just say, hey, maybe you're in a good spot right now, just say, hey, I'm in a good spot right now, but do you mind checking in on me every now and then? That's a lot easier than saying in a bad time, hey, I need help.
Yeah.
Find someone or have a resource. There's so many suicide or mental health talk lines, telephone lines that you can call where you don't have to know the person if you're not comfortable talking to somebody. And they're immediate, they're 24/7. You have someone right there who's a trained professional or volunteer to be able to talk to you about what you're experiencing, who can get you linked up with counselors or a doctor or a crisis team if you need it. There are options out there, and I mean, I know I just saw a statistic that said I think it was something like 80% of men in Canada are more likely to die from suicide than they are from any other disease, cancer,
Wow.
heart disease, anything like that.
That's
and
horrible.
women are women are 6 or 7 times more likely to have multiple attempts at suicide. Men are more likely to be successful because of the more aggressive nature that they try. So a lot more times men will just often shoot or hang themselves. Women will try pills or something else where it may not be as effective immediately. So women have a higher attempt, but men are actually significantly more likely to die from suicide right now than they are from any health disease. So the biggest thing killing men in Canada is men in Canada.
Wow.
And that says a lot about mental health and the stigma around it, especially, for men, where they're taught to not cry, they're taught to suck it up, that's girly, your emotions, keep that in check, that's not manly. That's literally killing men.
Yeah.
So I would just really urge people to find someone or somehow one they trust to reach out to them, to talk to about it, and to get help if that's something that they can actually do.
Absolutely. Wow. That's a horrible statistic, and I hope we can curb it with that. I don't know what the statistics are in the U.S., unfortunately, but I mean, wow. More people are
Yeah.
likely to take their own life than die of a natural cause. That's insane. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. So
that stuff needs to stop.
it's a bigger problem than people think it is, which is really, really sad, and it's really disheartening. But I mean, I know that I speak out on it a lot, and if that just helps even one person understand that they're not alone and that it's not just them going through something and that they are worth it and I've done my job, or the more people that I can reach by just saying, this is out here, this is my experience. Maybe someone listens and they kind of have a change of heart and say, oh, okay, maybe my brother who's got it all of a sudden isn't just being a little crybaby.
Yeah.
Maybe there's something actually going on here. And then maybe that opens a discussion for someone else. And that guy's brother gets the help that he needs because his brother or sister, family member realized that, it's not just some emotional crybaby thing. It's a legitimate issue that he can't control. So that's why I think it's really important to talk about it and to have personal experiences shared, because you never know who's out there and listening and who it might help save. be able to have a platform to do it, is irresponsible of me not to take that opportunity and speak on it. So
wise words. Logan, I've taken up an hour and a half of your time.
Oh my goodness. I told you I could talk.
Hey, I'm happy for it, and we definitely are probably going to do this again, hopefully in the future. But for now,
Absolutely.
I think what I'm going to do, especially those two very heavy topics, I'm going to let people digest that. I won't. I could keep talking for another hour and a half or more, even. But I just I want people to digest those two. Excuse me. I want people to digest those two topics, because they're, especially in the sport, and not even just the sport, in life in general. I mean, we can all agree, for one, don't be a jerk. Just because she's a girl doesn't mean anything different from you and I. All right. And then the other part is, if you need help, seek it out. It's just as easy as giving a phone call to someone, and and it's completely acceptable nowadays. No one's going to be like, no, we're not doing that anymore. We're breaking the curse, the spell. Logan, you and I are starting that out. All right.
Yeah, we are.
All right. Awesome. So everybody, thank you so much for watching. Hopefully we'll have Logan on in the near future. And let's thank Logan for her time, of course, today. And Logan, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Oh, thank you for having me and letting me talk forever about two pretty heavy subjects.
Yeah, there we go. Next time we'll talk about a fight card or something. How about that?
I would love that.
All right. All right, Logan. Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.